have to know.
Listening to Phyla and Fandom, a podcast ran by two furry scientists, your resident zoologist, Dr. Wildlife,
and bug lover, me, Nassie.
Each week, we will be exploring the world around us by discussing current topics in our own scientific fields, as well as current happenings in fandom-based subcultures like the furry fandom.
Today's date is March 6th, 2020, and this will be episode 7. All right, so today we have guest with us, Clover. She's a arborist by trade, has a bachelor's in forest engineering from the University of New Brunswick, which is where I'm from, New Brunswick, Canada. She works currently as a city planner for the Greater Toronto area and also volunteers with cons like Camp Farrell. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome, Clover.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here, guys.
It's tree time today.
It's always tree time in my world.
That's very true. So, I've heard of your job title before, but to be honest, I don't know much about forest engineering or that role. So, what is it? What would you describe it as?
So forest engineering takes like the side of forestry that deals with a lot of the mechanical and the numerical side of things. So it's a little less of the biology, but it's a lot more of like the numbers, calculations, things like that. So and a lot of times what that gets into is city planning, which is actually what I do right now. And whereas like a forester is typically out in the woods managing a forest, somebody like myself, we're in an urban situation dealing with that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Interesting. And so like, is that what an arborist is like by definition? Or is there a difference between a forest engineer and an arborist?
Yeah, so a forest engineer would look after like a forest as a whole. So you're looking in an urban environment, you're dealing with like parks, street trees, that kind of stuff. Simply put, an arborist looks after the individual tree. So looking after things like pruning, looking after things like fertilizing, proper tree planting, that kind of stuff. So cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's like the kind of thing that you did for me last summer, because we have a tree in our yard right now that has a bunch of damage to it, and you came and kind of assessed it and told us it was rotten in its middle and it has to go.
Yeah, so that's exactly. So that's the arboriculture side, and I have formal training in that as well too. Yeah, so that's going out and assessing a tree, seeing the kind of risk associated with it, and then giving the city a call in the case of your tree and being like, "Hey, you need to come and take down this tree." Somebody who's like a forester, a forest engineer is going to look at things like, what's the species diversity for the city of Toronto, and how can we better manage that so that we don't have monocultures. There's a lot of like invasive species that are coming in destroying our monocultures and stuff, like trees like ash or Dutch elm disease is coming in and killing all of like the elk trees. Mm-hmm. So it's this whole cool thing where that's more so the planning and that side of things. That's the engineer side, and then the more practical at the tree level, taking a look at it, in an individual. That's the arborist level.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I see like, especially in Guelph where I'm from, like along the campus roads, there's all of the Australian maples, I think it is.
There's the Norway maple. Are they like purple leaf kind of thing? Yeah. So that's the Norway maple.
Oh, okay. So like, is the goal to try and get that as like heterogeneous as you can, like sparsing it out with like as many different species?
Yeah, exactly. So that way, like if an invasive species does come in and starts attacking trees, it's not that you're losing an entire urban forest, you're only losing, a small percentage of that. So in most municipalities in Ontario, to give you an idea, maple species comprises about 20 to 40% of the canopy. So imagine you going outside, and having an insect like Asian longhorn beetle coming in and destroying all the maple trees in your neighborhood. And you look at your trees and you go, I'm missing 40% of them. Right? So it'd be huge devastation to the neighborhood.
Yeah, so, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, I guess I've always wondered, is there any particular goal that a city goes in and is like, okay, we need this amount of tree cover per this area, because I'm sure that's kind of like a well of where your job is to make sure that that density is maintained over the course of the city.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So there's been a lot of like studies and literature out there as to what an ideal canopy cover would be for municipalities, and what we're finding right now is that most are shooting between the 30 and 40% range. So if you're getting about 30 to 40% canopy cover in your urban greenscape, then that's going to be great. And what that's going to do is things like reduce the urban heat island effect. So microclimates, that kind of stuff. You're going to increase shade. There's a whole plethora of benefits that trees provide, and that's that number. So 30 to 40% right now, it seems to be what most municipalities are shooting. So
Cool, interesting. And Doc, do you notice that varies depending on where you are? Like, because what is your city like in terms of planting? Do you have a lot of trees? Because I've never actually been to Texas, so I don't know if they do the same kind of thing or they can in that kind of climate.
Yeah, honestly, that for that whole conversation, I'm just like trying to picture downtown Dallas and like everything in my general area. Um, we have a lot of really big old trees, but overall coverage is kind of low, I would say. Closer to where I work, I'm in like this old historic park, and of course there's a ton over there. But on average, I would say our tree coverage is kind of low. I'm kind of curious now what percentage they try to stick to here. But it honestly makes me sad because, of course, I come from Arkansas where everything is covered in trees. There's trees everywhere. Like you live in a little forest everywhere you go in my area of Arkansas, and then I moved to flatland, dry Texas. It's kind of like a culture shock. Maybe that's why I love going to Toronto so much because I feel like I see more green. Um, I don't know if that's climate or if that's city planning differences. I'm not quite sure.
To be honest, it's probably a combination of both. It all depends on what people's goals and objectives are, and what the feeling for the neighborhoods are, that kind of stuff. So yeah, having actually worked in Texas myself, I can completely understand the lower canopy cover and things. And you're right in that a lot of that probably does have to do with climate as well too. Warmer
Hmm.
climates, harder on the trees and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and a lot of municipalities in Ontario don't hit that target of 30%. Toronto, for example, right now is sitting at 26. So it's ideal, it's 30 to 40, but I mean, right now it's sitting around 26 to 28%, I think is what the numbers are, right? There are some municipalities that are as low as 15,
Yeah.
right? So, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's very interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because especially coming from New Brunswick, which is kind of like out in the boons, like more rural area. Like I feel like the cities there, they don't really take into like that in terms of city planning, like in terms of making green spaces or like planting trees. It's like there's enough green space around us that it doesn't matter what's inside the city. But that's probably not like you should be thinking about that as early as you can to maintain as much as you can into the future. Because whatever that future holds, there's going to be probably more urbanization necessary to carry more and more people, right? So
It's
Mm-hmm.
exactly it. Yeah, for sure. It's all dependent on the values of the community, right? So yeah, if you're growing up with trees all around you, the last thing you're thinking about is the tree on your front lawn, right?
yeah,
So
Yeah.
whereas if you're in another environment where you don't get to see a lot of trees, for example, and you see these big beautiful canopy areas, you're like, oh wow, this is exactly what I want. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but,
And I mean, I think that's something to be said for like the important thing, like parks and that kind of thing too within that city planning, not just having trees like along your streets and that kind of thing, but having a certain amount of space that's dedicated to what a raw environment might look like. Even if it happens to be an island population, it's like having that green space is important for people.
no,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was talking to like a few friends, and it kind of this is a little bit of a tangent, but they were talking about the same kind of thing, but with like stars in the sky and that kind of thing. Whereas like we're thinking more consciously now about having parks and green spaces within cities, but then like the people that are under a lot of light pollution and stuff like that, they never have gotten to see stars in the sky, and so whether we want to start putting in kind of blackout zones where there's no lights and so you can still see the stars and that kind of thing. And I don't know, it's just a pretty interesting symmetry because you have the case where we're more conscious in one way but less in another, and whether that will facilitate a change in one way or the other.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it helps strengthen like social cohesion and spurs community like revitalization. There's all these different great things about like having trees and green spaces, but also like having blackout zones and stuff like that. I don't know if you know this, Dr. Wildlife, but there's a small town actually near Austin, Texas. It's called Dripping Springs,
Hmm.
and they're a blackout city. So
wow.
yeah,
Oh.
so speaking of, I think it's around 10 o'clock at night. They purposely dim all the lights in the town and stuff like that, so that it is this beautiful night sky that you
Wow.
don't see.
I've never even, yeah, that's funny because like I was thinking about this from this. I didn't know cities or some places actually did that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, there's not a lot, but yeah, you can get into these more rural areas and stuff like that. The only reason I found out about it is I was driving through it late at night one night and was what's going on here, right? Like all the signs are dim and everything like that, and you find out that it's so that you can look up and you're not having all that light pollution and stuff. So it's really cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. I just did a quick Google search, and it's all these pages coming up saying called "Seeing Stars in Dripping Springs," and like all this information about it. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, it all comes action that people have with nature and stuff too.
Exactly.
Like, it makes, I don't know, I genuinely think it makes people happier within the city that they are if they're able to see these amazing sights and like a little bit of wonder in your everyday life. It's refreshing.
Oh, definitely. So
also, I just want to say that looking at the map, just outside of Dripping Springs, there's a Deep Eddy vodka tasting room. So you hit up the Deep Eddy vodka tasting room. And then you go a little bit farther into the city to see some stars later on that night. The tasting room closes at 5 p.m., so you got some hours to kill. But
there you go. So
awesome.
not to put a plug in or anything like that, but if you're looking for something to do, there's a place called it's called Salt Licks, and they have a beautiful like barbecue pit restaurant out that way. It's all you can eat meat and BYOB, so it's delicious.
Man, I probably won't. I won't need the BYOB if I stop at the Deep Eddy vodka tasting room before I go there. So
Yeah,
smart traveling, right?
Exactly.
No, I just had to bring up Deep Eddy vodka because anybody that has encountered me at a fur con or roomed with me knows that I am like obsessed with Deep Eddy lemonade vodka. Like that stuff is, I don't know what they do, but you could literally just mix it with water and it tastes like lemonade, except this lemonade gets you buzzed. So, so seeing that on the map, I'm like, bookmarking that.
There you go.
And then you become like this is going to date me, but like the double rainbow guy. It's like so.
Oh my gosh. So I mean, we were kind of talking a little bit about how comparisons between people that have trees everywhere and someone that lives in a city with few trees and opinions and such on like forests. And so Clover, that kind of made me interested in knowing a little bit about what got you into this field. Like what sparked your interest in caring about trees and making a career out of that basically?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. It's it's long, but I won't give you the whole boring details. But basically, what ended up happening is I started taking environmental sciences when I was in elementary school. Well, I guess junior high school. And that was by no means a choice of my own. It was the choice of the schools. They're like, no, this is what you're going to be doing. And I was like, all right. And yeah, I just fell in love with it. And then I went from there. I just started taking more of the environmental courses. And I took in Canada, it was called OAC, like grade 13 physics. I took grade 13 physics and I didn't do so hot in class. And I was like, exactly. So when I worked in a marsh as a co-op student to go and get some extra credit to make up for the fact that I did so horribly in physics. And then I was just like, I'm going to give this a second shot. And from there, I aced my physics stuff and then ended up taking forest engineering. So figure that one out. I failed physics for the first time and then I became an engineer.
Nice.
Well, it's kind of similar to me. Like I just about failed biochemistry, and now I'm teaching biochemistry at the university. So
There you go.
the early on experiences don't make you in the end.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so once I graduated, I actually went out west and I worked in the oil fields as an environmental consultant, and kind of put my time in there and realized that no, I wanted to deal with like an urban environment and deal with trees and stuff in an urban setting. So, moved to Toronto and yeah, got a job originally as an arborist and kind of just worked my way up through the ranks to city planner. So
Nice. That's
yeah.
really awesome. Yeah, because some people get into like animal care or some sort of environmental role because maybe their family went camping all the time. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like it's like for me, like before I even lived on a farm, which I did for a good chunk of my life up until college. But and I just want to say for those listening, one of our supporters is also listening in on this podcast recording, and this listener has come up with a bingo card, which we will eventually post on Twitter so people can participate while they're listening. But anytime I say something, I'm like, I wonder if Tom is claiming bingo right now because I just earlier Nasi mentioned something about like, not to date myself, so that's a comment about me being old. And then I'm talking about growing up on a farm, which arguably I guess could be some sort of weird humble brag. So I'm like, hmm. Anyway,
Bingo.
but I kind of got like drug along on these outdoor adventures from like a young age. And at first, I mean, when you're young, sometimes you're reluctant about things that you end up actually loving as an adult. And for me, I guess that was like camping and such that I
Mhm.
grew to love. So, um, it's just interesting to see if someone had like a class or something that kind of spun them in that direction, like what both of you were talking about, or if there was like particular camping moments that struck a chord and then lasted up into your career. Um, I think that's one of my favorite things, not only about this podcast, but just meeting other scientists or just meeting people in general. It's like, how did you get to where you are? So those kinds of
Mhm.
stories are always really, really fun to talk about.
Mhm.
Nice.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because I love nature, but I never did much like camping itself when I was little. Like we
Hmm.
always did like fishing trips and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That got me a little bit more connected with nature, and like we grew up in the middle of nowhere too, so that kind of helped. Like it was like camping all the time in a way.
Mhm.
And I didn't really actually get to do anything intensely camping related, like in a tent and stuff like that, until high school when I was working doing field work for the museum. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know. It's kind of funny because like I don't have that camping experience, but I still had the like deep desire to work and do stuff with nature. Yeah.
Hmm. And it
Yeah,
kind of
no,
makes me,
definitely.
it makes me wonder like how many other people in science or in the fandom maybe haven't had a camping experience until they're an adult or such. Because Clover, you volunteer with Camp Farrell, right?
Yeah, I
I think I
do.
heard
It's
that. And I wonder, do you guys have you ever tracked like how many people go to Camp Farrell and that's their first camping experience? Is that something you guys have ever looked at?
No, typically not. We track like first time comers to the camp themselves and see how many people come back and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that's really interesting to see the numbers in that. Because typically what we find is that when somebody comes to camp, they really love it and they keep coming back for that experience. But yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see exactly what you're saying there. How many people this is like their first kind of big camping trip where you're out in the woods for 5 days kind of deal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because
Well,
it's kind of like I feel like there's a lot of things that people in fandom subcultures like furry don't really consider until you put like a little bit of a furry twist to it. Like for me, it's zoology facts. Sometimes it can be really boring facts, but I post it on my Twitter account while I'm in fursuit and people eat it up. Or we get drunk and host a panel at Texas Furry Fiesta and people eat that up. So I'm curious if camping is the same way as, trying to teach people something. You
yeah.
make it furry and now people are like, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
yeah, I definitely think that there's like a portion or an aspect of that for sure, where people are like, they might not have enjoyed camping, like the
Mhm.
traditional sense, but when you throw that furry element into it, for sure, it becomes like a totally different experience, right? And it's not like you're losing any of the nature element of it, but it just becomes, you're almost kind of adding to it, right? So, and
Yeah.
there's an inherent like relationship. Nasty and I were talking about this earlier today, which is there's this inherent relationship between being a furry and being like a steward almost for the wilderness and for the wild, with animals or whether it be with nature and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see those relationships, right? In terms of like how things, somebody who's got a wolf persona, for example, right? And then they're very much into wolves, and they can tell you all about them and that kind of stuff too. It's
Mhm.
really, really crazy and awesome. So
Yeah, because people are a little bit more connected with nature.
it's exactly it, for sure. And I mean, like I was saying before, is like, you know, in these urban situations where you like a lot of furries live in urban situations, they're in big cities and things like that, because it's where they tend to gravitate towards. And you've got this now opportunity that these people can be like a steward for the environment in an area where there's not necessarily those people, right? So going out to the country and finding somebody who likes trees, that's easy. Right, going to a city, yeah, like downtown core, and finding somebody who knows things about trees, it's a bit tougher,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, but that's like a pathway to get them invested because it's found in the woods. Do you know what that woods looks like? Like, can you support that kind of connection with other people in your life? Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And I mean, we've talked about Camp Feral, but I don't think we ever said exactly what it is. So, it's like this idea that furries are very connected with nature and like that we should appreciate nature in this way has kind of translated into these other kinds of events like Camp Feral. And so Camp Feral, if do you want to say what Camp Feral is, because you probably have a better description of it
yeah.
as staff.
So Camp Feral is it's a convention. It's been running for over 20 years now. I think we're like 22 years old or something like that. And what it is it's a camp. It's a 5-day adventure out in the woods for furries that they can get together, and they go to this like cabin camp experience. So there's like it's a in the summertime, it's like a children's youth camp kind of thing. And then we go there, and you can do all of the outdoor activities. So they have like rock climbing, canoeing, they have kayaking. I don't know why I said that, archery, right? And then just you get in touch with it being outdoors, and you get disconnected, which is good. I love that part of that, where you're just like, you're away from your phones and things like that, and you can go and just experience being outdoors, right? So, but it's self plug again, which is like, if you're looking for a great 5-day adventure out in the woods, go to Camp Feral. It's great way to disconnect from technology, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's in Algonquin Park in Ontario, so it's like in the middle of an actual like big provincial park, which is awesome. And I've been once, and I definitely want to go back again because it was just a really cool experience. And I think like people are starting to do this more and more within the furry fandom. Like it's not just, I mean, Camp Feral has been here and doing that for a long time. Clearly, like these people were already connected, kind of a step ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But then, like, we have the monthly event Kerfluffle here, which has done like trips to the zoo and stuff like that with furries. And I mean, that makes sense. Like, you're enjoying real animals as you're pretending to be an animal. And so it's again that connection to nature. And there's like furry ski weekend that's popped up over the past couple of weekend or years, where people just go to a camping lodge and they go skiing all weekend. And I think that's pretty cool. And it's still getting out and doing something, which is like, I think, I don't know, just a really cool way to take like the fandom in a sense. I also heard that there was something that happens in either Pittsburgh or California along the same lines. Like it was a weekend camping trip that a bunch of furries do every year. Yeah, so it's definitely happened more and more frequently recently, and I think that's a really great thing because it's not just, to me, it's not just for like the furry fandom. It's the idea that it's also just a great opportunity to get like photos, and you get lots of cool like experiences and shots. And sometimes like with the ski weekend, you're in amongst a lot of public people while they can see you. And I feel like the public is more receptive in that space. It's like, oh, you're being an animal out in nature. That just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And so they're like happy to get photos, and they're happy to like participate or like experience the fandom in that way. And so I think that's really cool. And I mean, you're doing something at FE in a couple of weeks too, like the aquarium tour too, Doc. That's like
Oh yeah.
that same kind of connection, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, when they approached me with the idea of that, I wouldn't say they seemed a little weary of it, but they were like, we're kind of thinking maybe we could do a tour at the aquarium and you could lead it, but I don't know. And I'm immediately like, yes, 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 yes. Like, please, people will love it. The only downside of that is since it's a guided tour, like, well, we only sold too many tickets. I think or so many tickets. We only we like capped it at 65, I think, because if you're one person, you can only yell so loud in an aquarium while you're trying to talk to people. So I so wish I could have brought more than 65, but it's going to be a really good group, and I'm hoping that maybe there will be opportunity to do this at more conventions. At FE, I have a guest of honor spot, but I would love to be able to do that at other cons, just as an attendee or like as a panelist. Be like, hey, there's a zoo or aquarium or museum nearby. Let's do a guided tour and do it as like just a special event. It doesn't have to be a guest of honor thing. And I'd love to do that because for me, it's introducing people to my world and trying to get them inspired to care enough to help conserve these critters. Because like we were talking about earlier, how wolf furries know a lot about wolves, and I'm sure they like them, but how inspired are they to help make a change to conserve them? Like,
Mhm.
I feel like there's a lot we can still do to get furries to care about that more and make changes in their life. So hopefully events like just showing up to the aquarium and listening to me blab about fish for, I think it's 3 hours. I don't know. Those poor people. They're going to be stuck with me for a long time.
I think it's going to be amazing. Like, it's going to be really cool. We're going to see lots of cool things on Twitter. I'm sure there are people that are like, I went on this thing. We need to make this a yearly event kind of thing.
Yeah, I had people messaging me the other day because I've started posting more and more about FE now that TFF is out of the way. I'm like, trying to hype up FE and the aquarium tour and blah, 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 blah. And I started I think I got like 2 or 3 messages yesterday that were like, is it sold out? And like, I didn't even know this was a thing, or I missed out on tickets. And I'm like, oh no, there's so much interest. But I mean, it's definitely going to be a really good time, and I'm thankful because I would say I've roped them into it, but I have Ari there to help me control the crowd a little bit, and Saber and Bolty are also going to be helping me. Maybe they can control the mob of questions that I may get, or help the group stay together. Exactly how they're going to be helping, I'm not quite sure, but I'm just glad that they're going to be there with me.
Yeah,
Because it's the first time I've done something that big in terms of a tour. Usually
it'd be
it's,
cool.
a few people.
I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes too. Because I'm thinking about doing something similar at Anther East Coast, which I'm going to in August.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like on Dalhousie campus, so there's like an insect collection there, and I want to give a tour of the insect collection space, and then like give a panel on like how to do insect collection identification, and then like pinning and stuff like that for personal collections. So like it'd be cool to see like what the reception is and like how people enjoy, like whether people are open to doing that more and seeing like what, I don't know, what kind of opportunities might be there for other cons and that kind of thing too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. Well, speaking of furries knowing things about their species and their
Ooh.
characters, I think we all know what time it is now, right?
Yeah, I think it's time for the persona questionnaire with a guest.
So, Nasi, you came up with these questions, right? So I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you take the lead on this one.
Sounds good. Okay. So, Clover, we have 4 questions about Australian Shepherds, which is your persona species.
Okay.
And we are interested in whether you know your species well, or your breed, I guess, in this case, well, or not. Okay. Are you ready?
Am I allowed to use my phone to cheat?
No. I know I'm here with you, so I can check if you're using your phone. All right.
We just casually turn this way so you can't see my phone.
I appreciate your honesty, though. I think that's the first time someone's asked that question. I don't know if people have done it in the past. Judging by their scores on these trivia questions, I don't think people have cheated.
All right. So, first question. What genetic trait is rare in humans but quite common in Australian Shepherd?
Dichromatic eyes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding,
Got
ding,
it.
ding, ding.
There we go.
That one was even multiple choice, so you're probably going to be fine on this as well.
Okay.
Okay, the rest are multiple choice. Question 2. Where does the Australian Shepherd breed originate from? A, the United States, B, Spain, C, Australia, D, Mexico.
Ooh, I don't know. I'm gonna say the United States because I think that was pretty common then.
No.
No?
So I don't know. I found a couple of sources that said that the Australian Shepherd breed was kind of like perfected in the United States in terms of its like herding ability.
Yeah.
But the breed was first like kind of came about, and its herding first came about in Spain.
Really?
Yeah.
So how to get the name Australian Shepherd?
Nothing really said. It just said that like it was just called that. And I think it was like maybe like Austria or something like that. Or
okay.
I don't know. But it's originated in Spain.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. All right. Question number 3. The Australian Shepherd named Hyper Hank was famous for what skill? A, digging, B, shepherding, C, frisbee, or D, fetch.
I'm gonna go with C, frisbee.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
Shepherding. I love that.
Yeah, so I like this was just like in trying to find out different things about Australian Shepherds for the show.
Yeah.
But it apparently Hyper Hank was like amazing at doing like frisbee shows and like had this frisbee routine with his owner and was in the 1970s Olympics even.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. Or no, 1970s Olympics and on like the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. All right. Last question, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get this one because I
don't know. Like, I'm sweating here.
I kind of tailored it towards you. So, what is the name of the Australian Shepherd school teacher and the Australian children's show Bluey? A, Cassiopeia, B, Aura, D or C, Comet, or D, Calypso?
I think it's Calypso. Is it?
It's Calypso.
Awesome.
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding, ding, ding.
Not too bad.
No, you did pretty good.
So I got what, 3 out of 4?
3 to 4.
There we go. So yeah, passed.
Yeah. So, you're allowed to keep your persona.
Yeah. I win.
Yeah.
So you did pretty good. You know, that was a good bout of trivia, but the next part of this podcast is also sort of a trivia question. Not specifically geared towards you, though you'll have a chance to guess as well, but we won't be giving you the correct answer today because these questions are meant for our audience, and that is our Guess Who segment, which is hashtag guess and then who is in HOO, the sound that an owl makes. Guess Who is basically weekly trivia questions where we play an animal vocalization and you, the audience, have to guess the species. Participants will have 1 week, so until the next podcast episode, to get their answers in by emailing us at phylaandfandom@gmail.com. The first to get the correct answer will get a shout out in the following week's podcast when the answer is revealed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play this now. Did you hear it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So.
Well, what do you think it is, Clover? Nazi, you can't guess because you're the one that sent me this.
I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should guess because I think that I might know what it is. So what I will do though is I will give a hint,
Okay.
that it is not an Australian Shepherd.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good hint. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe it is an Australian Shepherd. What if? What if they got a little
There.
squeaky?
There you go.
Yeah, that's when they're hurting. They make
Oh
that
my
sound.
god, if they made that noise, can you imagine? They're just like running full speed through like a herd of sheep, just like beep 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 beep. Whatever they're chasing. Oh my god. Well, anyway, for those of you that just listened to that, if you think you know what it is, send in your guess or answer to phylaandfandom@gmail.com. Obviously, we have no way of checking if you cheated to get your answer. But let's all be good sports and actually try and give it a good try. If you just have a funny answer that you think is hilarious, like wow, that was an Australian Shepherd or anything like that, go ahead and send it in. Who knows? We may we may still read it off for you. And with that, that is the end of episode 7. Clover, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we get to the shout out section?
No, it was great. And thank you guys so much for having me on the show tonight. It's been great. And yeah, hopefully I can come back again soon.
Thanks for
For
coming
sure.
on.
Yeah, it was treat time today.
Treat time.
Tree time. So for those of you listening to this, if you haven't already checked us out on Patreon, you totally should. That's what helps support this podcast. We currently have 7 wonderful patrons, but we would love to have 8, 9, 10, 20, 50. Who knows? You can support us at patreon.com/Phyla and Fandom. You can also follow us on Twitter at Phyla and Fandom or on Facebook underneath that same name. And Clover, if people want to follow you, how can they do that?
I have no idea.
No idea,
No,
everybody.
you think I know my Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter at Clover_puppy. And yeah, that's probably the best place to check me out. So
No plug for the roller derby account?
no, not yet.
Okay.
So I got to get a bit before I start plugging that.
All right.
Oh.
Clover's an up and coming roller derby star, so
Oh my god,
we'll
I
be on the
love
lookout for that.
that.
We'll update people.
I love that so much. Nasi, if I didn't know you, how could I find you?
If you didn't know me, you can find me on all platforms: Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram under Entober.
Cool. I'm also pretty straightforward to find. You can find me Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all underneath Dr. Wildlife. Once again, if you're not already following this podcast on social media, the podcast accounts is Phyla and Fandom. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Phyla and Fandom, as well as on YouTube underneath that name too. Otherwise, this is the end of episode 7. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks.